Hi, welcome to today's episode of Speak Greasy at Max Street Kitchen, where we talk to chefs who delighted us with their food right here in this kitchen. My guest today is Chef Luke Robinson, who started his career at Jamie Oliver's 15 and went on to work at the Fat Duck, Nobu, and most recently helmed the kitchen of Evelyn's table in London. Now he's actually spending time with us right here in Mumbai at the table, and you can enjoy his food at the restaurant. So, we were just talking about your, I asked you where you went to culinary school, and you started telling me about your experience with 15. So I think that was your real culinary education more than, the formal sort of school that you went to. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of worked a bit as a chef before getting onto the course. So the course took 15 people, which is why it's called 15 a year. And at the time when I applied, it was thousands of people that applied. So I was quite lucky to get into it. And it's just such a in-depth kind of immersion into...
So 15 is a restaurant format, but it basically has chefs who are going through a kind of training program in a way. Is that fair to say? And, before we sort of talk a little bit more about that experience, because I think it's such an interesting way of, they always say on-the-job experience is the best. And this is kind of what you had. But just sort of rewinding a little bit, what prompted you to get into the culinary space?
Well, I get in trouble when I... The reason
okay, all the more reason.
No, I upset my mom a bit. So my mom wasn't fantastic at cooking.
Oh, okay. We won't be sending this to her then to watch.
But I did have a background of people that cooked in the family. So, my mom cooked some things really well, don't get me wrong. But I think because they were both so busy, both of them worked full time. So my mom was kind of just shh, and just chuck it out, So food was a thing that was it wasn't that important in our house when I was growing up. But when I went to see my uncle or my grandma, they really cared about food. And, my grandma would spend the whole weekend cooking 25 courses of different things for way too much food. And so it came out of survival more than anything else.
Yeah.
I have to phrase it nicely because she will get upset. I'm not saying that in a way, she was just too busy. But when I saw that side of things and it was really caring about food and not caring, but it being more important than anything else, then that's kind of what I realized how important it is.
Going back to, your experience at 15, I remember actually when it started because I was living in London, and the idea of a restaurant being sort of run by young chefs was very interesting. And I know a lot of people were sort of almost invited to kind of help chefs get that experience, even though they were paying for their meals. So it was just a very new concept. Mm-hmm. And, you mentioned there was a really hard program to get into. What was the process like?
It was a lot, actually, yeah. So my girlfriend at the time, her dad was a Labour activist, and he knew about it, and he actually told me, you should try and apply for this. So, I sent a letter off. And, I might get the figures slightly wrong, but I think about 50,000 people applied.
You're kidding.
Because it was the first few years. Later, it got much less. But yeah, it was about 50,000 people. So I had to go for 2 interviews where they decided, if they liked me or not, I guess. Or, if they had quite a particular way of trying to build this group that would work well together. So there was lots of people from different walks of life and different backgrounds, right? And then once you got through that process, we actually got sent to Wales and a team building weekend where we had to do kind of
a big piss up, basically.
Yeah, well, no, it wasn't actually. No, well, we did a little bit, but Jamie was there and we cooked and we had to do loads of crazy things like build bridges and out of bits of wood and climb up some of because the army trained there, this area.
Well, I guess, it's so important that the team gels and, works seamlessly together. But what was that? So were you there? Was everyone there for a year? What was the sort of program format?
So it's 18 months, the total. What they did is they kind of used the college to give the qualification, but the training was done working in the restaurant. So there was a team of chefs that worked there full time. And then all the guys who were training Like in any restaurant, you kind of join whichever section and move around, and then the guys there are training you on the job. And yeah, there was lots of events and outside things going on as well, because it was Jamie, he had a big media profile. And then in addition to that, we did loads of different things. So we got sent to work as a butcher, as a baker, and these are like quite long-term processes. So like a couple of months doing each thing. So, yeah,
Was this within the restaurant, or this was?
this is outside so I worked at Allen's Butchers in Mayfair, which is like one of the oldest institutions. It's actually now closed, but this is from like Victorian era. It's been there the whole time. So they had a cutting block, this massive piece of oak, and every day they put salt and scrub it with like a wire brush. So this piece of wood, or the central table, was like this, and then there's like a dip, like, because it had been there for...
Been scrubbed quite a lot.
Just a little bit. What happened with those placements was interesting, because at the beginning they didn't trust you, so they were like, who's this guy? So
You can watch.
Well, no, worse than that. It's like, go and fetch, hind core of beef from downstairs. No, carrying bits of meat up the stairs from 4 a.m., like big bits of meat. And then they would let you do things like chicken legs and duck legs. And then when they saw you could actually do some things, then they'd let you, So by the end, I was doing racks of lamb and beef fillet. And
Wow. And you talked about sort of spending time on a farm as well. So what was that like?
so Jamie I think he was quite far ahead of a lot of people with a lot of things that he does, actually. And one of the things that he thought was super important for us was like, go and see where the things you're using are being produced, whether that be, lamb or like the meat products, but also, the vegetable farms, herbs. We went to visit all of them to see how that process was. And he also took us to ones that weren't run very well, so you can see the both.
Right.
This is a supermarket farm that's doing high production, and this is what we use in the restaurant. So we got to see all of those places. But one of the funniest ones was the lambing season in Wales. So we turned up on a coach, and we jumped off. It's very early days, so they kind of only had a couple of years of like working out what this process was going to be. So we got off the coach, and the farmer is like, turns up. He's like, breech birth, come with me. And we're like, what? So we all jumped off the coach, and it's like, got taken into this barn where there's a sheep giving birth. And it was amazing. It was pretty shocking, because it was just like, whoa, just got it. But it tangled the neck, the umbilical cord, so he managed to untangle it, and then it was actually not alive, so he was like blowing like into the mouth like that, and then it woke up. But yeah, it was pretty crazy. We actually slept like on hay bales in the barn, because there was no...
The farmer didn't have lodgings for you all. Yeah. No, but I mean, sounds like an amazing, I guess, introduction in a way to the culinary world. And then you mentioned that you also had an opportunity to work at restaurants like the Fat Duck, and very different, obviously, experience. And then Nobu, which is again a completely different cuisine. But I know that when we first met, and I know that wasn't your first trip to Bombay, but our first interaction was when you were helming the kitchen of Evelyn's table.
Yeah.
And how did that sort of transition happen?
Well, I guess it was an interesting process, because I think that training that we just went through and talked about, it was kind of like a very different way of approaching food. So when I finished off there and I got to experience, at the time was the best restaurant in the world, in the top 50. So it was the number one, and they were doing just crazy things.
I think peak molecular gastronomy, era, and you went right to the top of the food chain in a way, in terms of where it was happening.
Yeah, there's so many funny stories from being there, and it was a super crazy place. I think I was starting work at 5 a.m. So started getting up about 4:30 a.m. And then I'd finish work about 2:30 a.m.
You're kidding.
And I was doing that 6 days a week. So it was mad. I really pushed the limit of what I could do as a human being. But some of the things that I learned there, I mean, the thing I say to a lot of guys that I train is like, it's a balance, isn't it? It's like you can put that much effort in, but you're going to reap that much reward. So it's finding the balance in between. I think it's good to push yourself. But yeah, you're right. You don't also want to burn people out if you're making those decisions. Like one of the things I ended up doing was climbing an oak tree to find oak moss. So he's like, right, this is what oak moss looks like. So me and this American guy
Go and forage
just
it.
walking around in the woods, like climbing up oak trees looking for this moss. Because Heston Blumenthal will come in and say, right, I want you to do this. So I want, so this was like making an acetate to put on your tongue that tasted of oak moss for one particular dish. It was like a smoked eel dish. But then there was like 4 or 5 other things that he wanted the guys to work on. And then he'd go and come back a month later. And then you'd like show him, whatever it is that he'd done. So one of the things me and this guy ended up doing was finding the oak moss to put onto like an acetate. And then it was like in a little, like those mint acetates that were like...
What, the thing you put on your tongue? Yeah. Like a mouth fresh.
Exactly, yeah. That was one thing. And the other one, it's quite funny because today I was actually fixing R1 in the kitchen. So it's like a little smoking pipe. And at the time, it didn't exist. So he sent us to Camden in London, bearing in mind like the restaurants in Berkshire, in the outskirts. So we went to Camden, which is like where people get tattoos done, and it's all like punk, and it's like a music area where Amy Winehouse was from and all of that sort of stuff. So we were going to all like the smoking shops for people that smoke weed to find an electric pipe, which we then stuck a pipe onto, and then we were smoking things with oak chips and what have you. And then, funnily enough, after that happened, somebody made a product which we now have in the kitchen. So,
Of course. Well, Camden's actually where I stayed in my first year at uni, and I lasted 1 semester, and then I was like, I'm going back to Bayswater.
That's a bit right.
Yeah, a little bit. But amazing. So, obviously you've got a whole sort of bag full of stories, and then you moved on from there, and where did you go next?
Yeah, so the reason I went back a little bit to that was like, it was a very kind of high level of information that I'd been given. So at the time, I was like, I kind of wanted to get stuck in straight away. So I worked for quite a few chefs to kind of build up my knowledge of like very high level food. But I was quite quick to get into being a head chef. And I was still quite young. So I headed up a couple of restaurants fairly quickly. And then that led into traveling around. So yeah, like I ended up in Italy.
Or you also ended up in India. What's first impressions of India when you came out here?
I think for the first few days, you're just like, whoa. But that's kind of what's nice about it.
But you've traveled around a fair bit. I mean, is it really very different from everything else you've seen?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, it's like there is other countries that have aspects of. So you could say like Bangkok's quite similar to Mumbai in a lot of ways. But yeah, I think India is very unique in that sense. Like when I say senses, is like it's really loud. Like how many places do you have like "Horn OK Please" written on all of the cars? So I think I remember I got off at Goa and they were still building a lot of the road network there, right? So we came out and we were like stuck behind this lorry full of chickens with "Horn OK Please." Chickens are all like trying to fly in the cage, and it was just bah, 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 and yeah, everything about it was just like, wow, this is exciting. Yeah, I think since I've got here and spent a little bit more time, I'm a bit less naive.
Haven't been conned as much on the street.
Everyone was telling me, oh, don't do that, and all of this sort of stuff, So every day someone would, approach me, and then the chefs are like, no, you can't do that. What do you mean? So yeah, I know my way around now.
Oh, you've got enough bodyguards around you now.
Yeah, it's not a big part, I don't think. I think actually one of the nicest things about India and Mumbai is that people just come and talk to you. London is the opposite, I'd say, of that. People just, you say hello and they're like...
I can vouch for that. So, we're sitting in Mac Street Kitchen today, and you've cooked quite a few meals here. How would you, this has always been a challenge for me, describing the space to someone who's never been. And of course, you can always show them all the photographs in the world. But how would you as a chef describe this to someone who's never been here?
So there's a lovely gallery above the cooking space, which is where everyone sits. And I think that's a really nice touch and what makes the events here work so well, because you're kind of in the kitchen, you can see everything that's going on, but you're also kind of isolated and you've got air conditioning. It's a good spot to be. It's kind of like a chef's table, but you're not right up in the table. I can remember you explaining it to me as part of the reason that you kind of laid it out was to do with sort of Great British Menu and Master Chef and this kind of thing. So there's like the different stations, and yeah, it's a good size space. So you can kind of spread your things out, have a lot of different sections, and I think it's really interesting because it's like a working area. It's like the bakeries there; they're actually trying to make all the croissants and turn all the bread over, and yeah, it's pretty. It's a challenge, but an interesting one to work in it. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about your cooking style, and I've obviously experienced, what you've been doing with us, but how would you describe your food?
In as few words as possible. So ingredient focused, and then globally influenced, I would say, is like the easiest, shortest way of putting it. So I really, really care about produce and where it comes from, and I have an interest in that, and I like to speak to the people that I'm getting that product from and understand it better. So I've always had a good relationship with all of my suppliers in that sense. And coming here, the first things that I did was I went to the market, right? I wanted to see what's good here and talk to the people and taste things and just have a good overview. So this is a really important side of it. And then the globally inspired part is like every country that you go to has got techniques that are fantastic. So, you want to use them. And I think that's how food's always been. So, Italy has pasta, but that was taken from China.
Really?
Yeah, through the Silk Road and Marco Polo. And, so the pasta was originally Chinese.
Oh my God, are you going to now also piss off a whole country by saying this? Or No, I know about Marco Polo. I didn't know about pasta not being originally Italian.
Yeah, so there's one other place that it exists, which is Manti, which is Turkey. But again, it's the Silk Road. So the Silk Road was where all those different spices and flavors and techniques kind of meandered through into eventually Europe. So that is super interesting to me, and I think that's something that we should continue to do. If somebody has a great technique, or a great philosophy behind food, then obviously maybe they don't want me to do this, but for me, it's like, yeah, we should use that. Take something works, you should take it and fit it into your ethos. I think so. That's.
No, I mean, I've seen that. I know I definitely see hints of Japanese cooking styles. Your chamanmushi and like with the seafood that you incorporate into your food. But to me, like your favorite, and this is as a complete non-chef and pure eater, I think for me the highlight of your cooking is your pastas for sure. And it's not just the usual fare; it's the sort of range that you have, and I know that we've incorporated a lot of techniques into our kitchen. I've been talking to you about ingredients and, whether it's the eggs or the flour and, all of that contributes to making such a great pasta, right? So what would you, like, if you had to give someone some tips or tricks into making a great pasta, what would those be?
Okay.
Lay it all out, chef. Lay out all your secrets.
Well, it's fine because it is literally simplicity. So all the pastas that you can think of that are like amazing, and that goes for the pasta that was on the menu before I arrived. If you think about it, it's all the simplest ones. So it's kind of just taking that product that's superb and trying to keep that flavor alive, sauce-wise. That's so important. And then for the Italians, and for me as well, I think, is the pasta is like the star of the show.
Yeah.
Even though it's kind of the boring bit that doesn't really taste.
Well, it's not though. That's the thing.
It's all the texture. It's the way that it holds the sauce. So a lot of the things that we were doing is kind of trying to stop using dried pasta and make our own force-through bronze. And one of the things that production method does is it makes striations on the pasta. So because it's super hot and lots of pressure just pushing the dough through the bronze, it kind of ruptures as it comes out. So then when that pasta gets put into sauce, all the sauce sticks to the pasta.
So it's not like smooth and slipping off it. It's kind of like...
Or sticks.
Sticky.
And then you've got the other little, tubular shapes or the shells or whichever, or cavatelli, for example, and they have like a little indentation on the inside and the sauce will go inside that. So there's a lot of it is to do with how does the sauce work with the pasta. So yeah, like famously the British have spaghetti bolognese, not an Italian dish at all. So this was
Oh my God, this episode should be called "Breaking all the food myths." But yeah, okay.
The British were in.
Except Bolognese, isn't that from Bologna?
Yeah, so the sauce
Okay.
is kind of a bad version of something that existed already. But the spaghetti, the reason I bring it up is the spaghetti you would never put with ragu because it doesn't stick to the pasta. And also with the spaghetti bolognese, they cook the pasta, or we cook the pasta. It's not how I would do it. And then they drain it, put some oil so it doesn't stick together, which never would happen. And then they put it in a bowl and it kind of sticks together, right? And then you put the sauce on the top. It's just like everything wrong.
Oh my God.
Everything
Okay.
about it is wrong. So,
Is that why now, actually, when you say that, it makes sense? Because a lot of the spaghetti dishes that we have are more like with chunky bits of, like tomatoes or whatever, and it's not so much sauce. It's,
well, the sauce, it doesn't look like there's sauce.
Yeah.
And it's all stuck to the.
yeah.
But if it's like lumps of meat, it won't stick. That's basically,
Fun fact, number 300 and something. But no, that's really interesting. But I know we've also been talking about eggs. The egg yolk is obviously a critical ingredient, besides the flour and water.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah. So once you break down the pasta into its constituent parts, the flour, the semolina, and most importantly, as you said, the egg, because it's the color. So what I learned when I was on 15, visiting different poultry farms, was that color comes from the chickens eating flowers and shoots in the morning. So it's actually the coloring that's in carrots that turns it orange. So it's carotene, or beta carotene. And what happens is in a proper free range chicken, if the chicken goes out in the morning and eats flowers and shoots and then lays the egg, it will be nice and orange. Or continually does that, it will lay orange eggs. And if they tend to prefer staying in the barn and not going anywhere, then they'll lay like the more traditional sort of yellow yolk. Because it's not consistent, a lot of people tend to feed the chickens the colouring.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's fine.
And it's probably more expensive to give them the actual sort of food that they should be having.
Yeah, exactly. So it's harder to like feed them the right flowers because only certain flowers have a large enough content anyway inside.
You were introduced to the concept of pure vegetarianism in Mumbai, which is vegetarians who, or rather eggless, right? That's actually what vegetarian means here. And we would just like scrap all of that pasta off the menu and come up with the eggless version. But you did a pretty damn good job with that. So, I couldn't tell it was any worse off for not having egg in it.
Yeah, I don't think I think you tend to find that the dry pastas are normally eggless anyway. And there's a few like artisan products that contain egg, but those are better made fresh anyway. So that's like your egg tagliatelle or your tagliarini. So you could dry that, and it would take a little bit longer to cook. But you have to dry at a very low temperature, like a 60 degrees, over a longer period of time. But most of the packets of pasta that you buy, if you look on the ingredients, is durum wheat and water, maybe some oil and salt. That's it. So that's what we've ended up doing. We just, instead of buying it from a manufacturer, we just have a smaller version of that machine, and that's the way we got around that one.
Well, lots of eggless work on the menu. I know I've been seeing that, but tell us what you've been eating while you've been in Bombay. Any favorite eateries, watering holes that you've discovered or been frequenting?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first time I visited you guys, I got whizzed around so many amazing places, I was really fortunate to get a good, view of the whole city. I was only here for such a short time, and I don't know how I ate that much, to be honest. It was pretty mad. So yeah, there's a few things that I love to do. So one of my favorites is going really late, like about 11:30 to Trishna, when it's like the last couple of people are just about to leave, and just going in and getting...
You're that annoying customer when they think they're going to be like closing and ready to like wrap up and get happy, and then you walk in.
I'm terrible, yeah. I think hospitality staff are actually the worst for that. But yeah, no, they stand by my table and just look at me as well. So, it's...
Don't take your time, basically.
I eat that quickly anyway. Like, I'm used to like eating over a bin, whilst trying to get all the work done. So yeah, that's not a problem. So I love that. Yeah, it's just great product, very simple. And you get the roti and this fantastic crab, and yeah, it's just a beautiful thing. So I love to do that. In the daytime, somebody took me here. Like, I obviously didn't discover this myself, and I think a lot of people will know, but Swati Snacks, the service is super quick. All the guys are really, really good at their jobs. I love it. Yeah, food's amazing. And vegetarian food.
It's also where Tim Cook visited on his trip to Bombay. He went to Swati Snacks, so you've got good taste.
Yeah, I loved it. I love it. And watering holes. So I don't get that far from home normally, but I do love Toto's. It's like the dive bar special.
It's the OG dive bar.
That I love. Abhishek's place, Woodside Inn.
Yep.
Yeah, so I love to go there. They have some decent beers, and
that's a Bombay institution as well. So I think you've nailed all of them for sure. I think they're everyone's favorite. So and I know you're taking Hindi lessons. How's that going?
Yeah.
Are you going to rattle off some Hindi for us?
I'm probably a little bit too embarrassed to do that, but I'll tell you something about trying to learn it. And so it's kind of this app, Duolingo, and it does actually help quite a lot because, now I can hear people saying kidare and...
Oh, I thought you were going to be like, I can tell if they're abusing me.
Oh, yeah, this as well, yeah. First thing I learned was swearing, but we're not going to go into that because that's how you pronounce properly, right? So it does help in the kitchen with little bits, and I understand, like if they're saying how much or where's this or how many minutes or, all of this basic stuff that we need for the kitchen. But I'm still a bit too embarrassed to actually try and talk. And when I say something, they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I just said it perfectly. So a lot of it's just Google Translate. But it is actually a good level. I can read the Sanskrit kind of letters a bit now. Yeah, so I can, when I'm doing the lesson, I can pick out, what is the sound for Ella or, whichever. And this was the big bit at the beginning that it was teaching me, and I was listening to it. It's like, ga, 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 ga. And they're all different. And I'm like, well, it's the same, And it's the same for everything. So it's tur. And I'm like, there's no difference. And people are like, no, listen, it's completely different. I'm like, it's the same.
The same word could mean something very different,
yes,
just with that nuance. So yeah.
But no, I obviously not very good. But
well, if you follow Chef on Instagram at Gully Chef, you'll see these random updates on how he's doing. And it's time for a quick rapid fire, and Chef, be as honest as you have been throughout. Okay, London rains or Bombay summer?
London rain, I'm afraid.
Or pani puri or vada pav?
Difficult one. I like them both. Probably vada pav.
Put it in one of your menus. Yeah. Restaurant awards, yay or nay?
Oh, I think it was such a good thing for the guys that we got in the list. So I have to say yay.
Plant-based meats, bad fad or here to stay?
I think here to stay, but using natural produce.
Gluten-free, vegan, or Jain? Which is your favorite guest to cook for?
Oh, I love cooking for everybody.
Oh, you can't. Come on.
I think it has to be Jain because I don't think anybody knows actually what the rules are, including the people that are Jain. Because truffle is definitely under the ground, but truffle is quite often wanted. Yeah.
Exceptional. Favorite food city in the world?
Tokyo.
I
need to go.
Dying to go there. Oh my God. If one more person says Tokyo to me, I'm getting on a flight. Okay. A bucket list restaurant that you're yet to make it to.
Oh. Can it be one that's closed and I'll never make it?
No. Or it could be one of those and then one that's still open.
I think one that there's many,
Yeah,
but I think one at the moment that I really like the ethos of is Frunton, the original Frunton.
Okay, and which is the one that's closed that you would have liked to?
I really would have liked to go to El Bulli.
I knew you were going to say that. I think that's on everyone's list. So, yeah, well, alas. But, well, I hope you make it there. And until then, enjoy the rest of your time in Bombay with us.